Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
Yesterday, the United Kingdom, from Thatcher to COVID, between 1990 and 2020, the United Kingdom experienced tension between unparalleled social change and a pragmatic political culture which sought continuity, compromise and gradualism. With the rapid changes in society and community, the rise of New Labour and a new political culture, the role of institutions were questioned perhaps for the first time, and the union itself coming under scrutiny. This is the subject of a wide-ranging book called Yesterday, the United Kingdom from Thatcher to COVID. I'm joined on the line by, I'm delighted to welcome the author Brian Harrison on the show. Brian, when you add the impact of the internet, Brexit and the COVID pandemic to the mix, could you argue that 1990 to 2020 is perhaps the most transformative period of the 20th century?
Thank you, Giles. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, I'll just explain that I'm Brian Harrison. I was born in 1937, so I've seen everything that I've written about in my book. I've got the book here, and Princeton have produced a lovely edition, as they always do. Basically, there have been major changes, of course, after 1990, but I wouldn't say that this is the most important period for change. The Industrial Revolution period in the late 18th century would be my choice, but the Victorians were full of change throughout the 19th century, and in the 20th century we've had two world wars, terrible world wars. So I don't think the claims of 1990 to 2020 are very high.
The book itself is, can we view it, because you have written obviously on the Britain in the 20th century with previous books that look at the period being the period after the war, the Queen Elizabeth taking to the throne, that sort of the new Elizabethan age. Should we see this book Yesterday as a continuation then of the books that you've already written?
Yes, I think it is a continuation, and it's relatively optimistic in tone by comparison with earlier books as I've written. I'm not as depressed as most people are in England at the moment by the situation. It doesn't worry me. We have all sorts of protections against danger and difficulty, and the political system is, in my view, a very good one. So it's a happy morning from me.
Yeah, I mean, I find this very interesting because I, interview people in the political sphere quite a lot. They've written I was talking to the head of the Free Speech Union on the first part of this show, and he seems to think that the UK is in a spiral of decline because free speech is being repressed. Multiculturalism has taken over. The political world is in turmoil, and basically, we might as well sort of all get on a plane and come and live in Spain if we could come and live over here. You take the optimistic view. Is that because you have? I'm not saying you personally have seen it all and done it all, but you have written about the resilience and the changes in politics and monarchy, and the British people seem to be able to weather all sorts of storms?
That's right. I think we've got a very good tradition of continuity combined with change, and our political system encourages both those trends. It looks back in the past and doesn't reject or repudiate the past, as some countries do. It accepts the past, but assimilates it and gears in with it. So, I think it's doing that very successfully at the moment, and I can say more about that, but you must guide me then.
When you come to write this book, it's a huge sweep. Because we spoke a little earlier, and I had picked on one particular segment, and you had said no, that we don't just deal with that, we deal with history, with politics, with monarchy. I mean, how do you approach writing about such a broad suite of subjects that you do in Yesterday? I mean, to bring together all these strands.
Well, you're quite right to say that it's difficult. The pretty big problem is that there's so much material and you have to select out of a great heap of material what you want to discuss. So that's a big problem, but that's my problem, and I hope not the reader's problem, because I try to help them through it all.
So, I mean, if we look at the world in 1990, I mean, Thatcher will resign politically. We will have the rise of New Labour. We will have the politics during this period. Would you say that we have the politics stroke Britain's foreign policy? Perhaps the wars in Iraq, getting involved in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. How do you look at the political situation, perhaps leading, from the early part of the 90s into the early part of what's called the noughties?
First of all, I'd say that we had a very good Prime Minister from 1990 to 1997, John Major. I think he's the only Prime Minister, really, whose reputation has improved in the last 20 years or so. But we had another good one after that, Tony Blair, who I think was a very good communicator, very fluent, very sensible, and I wish people would listen to him more now. They just dismiss his ideas as absurd, but I think he has very good ideas still, even though he's now in his early 70s.
It's interesting because Major is seen as the grey man, wasn't he? After the charismatic tsunami that was Lady Thatcher, and Blair with New Labour really brought in fresh air in terms of how politics was viewed, but also cutting the Labour Party off perhaps from its trade union links, or perhaps how it was perceived. So it would appeal to a feel-good factor in British socialist or British left-wing politics.
Yes, a fresh air is a very good analogy. I mean, I think it was fresh air. He was a very good communicator, and he was trying to do what I think was very necessary throughout the 19th century and 20th century, really, to bring the Liberal and the Labour traditions together in a united party of the left, which is wider than it was becoming in the late 1970s. He made it a wide-ranging, open party seeking wider recruits, particularly towards the centre.
Not only that, is that you're having to deal with, perhaps at this period, we're seeing for the first time since the Act of Union, the devolution of powers, or the increasing devolution of powers to the home nations, and also, of course, let us not forget the Good Friday Agreement, which puts on hold, hopefully solves, the terrible violence that was visited upon both the mainland and of course in Northern Ireland from the 1970s onwards.
Yes, I mean, Blair's success in regard to the Good Friday Agreement, as it was called, in 1998, in his first ministry, was a very great achievement. And there are very good descriptions of how difficult the whole business was of bringing people together. And he was up late at night eating Mars bars and keeping himself awake, and eventually brought it off. So that was a major achievement, and I think that needs to be acknowledged more often than it is. But he was also very good at trying to widen out the trade union movement and make it really more conscious of its national obligations within the United Kingdom as a whole.
Is it a case of then it was what Willy Brandt would call realpolitik? It is the pragmatism that takes over from the ideological stances that all parties had in Northern Ireland. If you think he was dealing with a cast of characters, it includes Gerry Adams, Dr. Ian Paisley, others who seem unmovable in their views, and we have that situation where that's the Good Friday agreements means that there can be the regeneration of Belfast. And it can go from being a basket case into what is now, one of the more dynamic and prosperous parts of the UK.
Well, quite right. I mean, this is a view that I think needs to be emphasised more. We have no terrorism either in Northern Ireland or on the mainland, and he deserves a lot of the credit for that. And I discuss in my book quite a lot about terrorism and how the British political system dealt with it with remarkable skill. I don't think it gets the politicians get enough credit for what they've achieved.
Another thing that you could say that Blair was good at was gauging, especially in this first term, of gauging the temperature or the mood of the country. During this period, we have, even though post sort of 1945, we were building quote unquote a land fit for heroes, NHS, the social, the restructuring of British society. The monarchy had always been untouchable. It was always something that you didn't question. However, the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, in 1997, of course, throws the whole question of the monarchy into the air, not knowing Blair goes and talks about being the people's princess. Front covers are screaming, your country needs you, Mom. Could you say that this period also marks the sort of the spark for the debate that we seem to be having about the relevance, the size of the monarchy, which would have been, almost all the way back to the divine right of kings, would have been a subject that you couldn't discuss, or you couldn't even say that should be slimmed down.
Well, Blair was awfully good at getting on with anybody, really. People came away from talking to him always thinking that he agreed with them, though he didn't always agree with them. He was just good at getting the best out of people. He got on very well with the Queen. He got on very well with Lady Di. He helped to persuade the monarchy to accept the public concern about Lady Di. And to get the monarchy in touch with reality, so to speak, but also unobtrusively to get her in touch with the real political situation, which she wasn't really sufficiently aware of.
So and I said that we're only just scratching the surface of this book, because there is so much in it. So we have to do sort of broad strokes, as it were.
Thank you for that.
We're leading, the two, perhaps you could say, the most sort of earth-shaking or the most culture-shaking events have been in the past 10 years have been obviously the pandemic, which puts people at home for a long period of time, and the results thereof, and also, of course. If I could just interrupt. Yeah, sure.
I wrote the book because of the pandemic.
Right.
It gave me some leisure with nothing happening, so I could get writing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people found that, but also, of course, and I'm sitting to you I'm talking to you from a radio station in Spain. When we go at the start of the book, the British people are Europeans. In fact, they are very enthusiastic, some would say, Europeans. And at the end of the book, the British are no longer Europeans because of what we in this region of Spain call el Brexit, Brexit, and all the divisions and the huge repercussions that has. I mean, that is a book, to put it mildly, Brian, on its own. So how does one craft that particular section?
Yes. Well, the problem is with writing a book of this kind, you've got to try and bear in mind the likely opinions of the people who are going to read it and not ignore them. And I should confess that I'm an enthusiastic European. I always have been. And I voted against Brexit. I thought it was a major mistake, but that doesn't depress me because I think the British people are coming to think also that it was a great mistake. And we're moving back towards the European alignment, which is what I like. And of course, a lot has changed since 2020. Two big things have happened. One is Trump, which nobody could have predicted. We can't rely on America to defend us anymore. And also we've had all sorts of difficulties with Boris Johnson, I don't need to tell you. And we're now getting back, I think, slowly onto an even keel. But I'm not pessimistic about the present situation, because it is much worse in these two areas than the situation was in 2020.
Of course, the rise of the internet and social media is a two-edged sword. It has brought people together. You can talk to your families, especially important. I mean, imagine a pandemic with no internet, for goodness sake. But also, it's fueled misinformation, distrust, the painting of sort of communities as us versus them. How do you write about the images, the issues of immigration? Because, previous to 1990, one might say, well, we had Windrush and we had people coming back from former empire, from the former empire. And now, however, this is being painted as small boats and a fear that immigration is a bad thing for the country as a whole. How do you approach that subject with empathy, or do you approach it very, very carefully indeed?
But it's very relevant. I mean, Tony Blair was very keen on immigration, and a great deal of immigration took place during his first two ministries. So he was very much with the trend on that front, and he really is a sort of hero of enthusiasts for the European connection. The trouble was that he had Gordon Brown to cope with, and Gordon Brown was never very keen on the European connection, and his ministry was greatly weakened by this continuous friction between him and his deputy prime minister, Gordon Brown, and so that made it less successful than it might otherwise have been. But nonetheless, he was very internationalist, very liberal-minded in his attitude to Britain's overseas relations.
You also mentioned the issue, and you also consider, I said it was wide-ranging, listeners, the issue of faith, because, Church of England, Catholic Church have faced some interesting times, and yet we have a multi-faith system in the UK. We're seeing the rise of mosques in religious fervour. What is your take on that? And do you think that the people have become more spiritual, more religious in certain aspects, but not in a way that has been before?
I don't think that is what's happening, actually.
Right.
I think there's a general secularization and a feeling that religion and all the conflicts that resulted from it in British history are now at an end, and that people are diminishing their religiosity, so to speak, and the danger now is that churches will be closing, cathedrals even will be closing, and I think an important problem actually for Britain is to keep the churches repaired and in good condition, and those wonderful cathedrals in use, available for people to visit and so on, not for religious reasons, but because they're beautiful places.
Sorry.
I was just going to say I'm a Anglican agnostic, as they say. I don't believe in Christianity, but I do believe in the beauty of the Church of England, and I would be sorry to see that go. We've got to look after it.
Why did you call the book Yesterday? The title is it a Lennon-McCartney reference? Why is the title of the book Yesterday?
Oh, well, you must say it's my fault, really. I thought of it, but Princeton were keen to adopt it, and I think they were right, because the important thing is that we, in making our choices and decisions about what we do now, we've only got yesterday to rely upon. We can't brush aside yesterday. We've got to work in sync with it. And I think the British system is very keen on continuity in thinking about the past and making the past relevant to the present and adapting slowly from the past to the present. And so I believe very much, actually, in the two-party system, which is a system which I think assimilates the past to the present very much more successfully than a multi-party system with electoral reform. So I'm not a radical reformer on the electoral front. I believe in the two-party system, and I think it will revive again.
You talk about, about continuity, and there seems to be a desire by those on either fringe to smash it. It's very easy to talk the politics of destruction, i.e., smash it up, start again. We need a revolution. We need to have these are elites controlling us. But when it comes to us, do you think that I like you think that the majority of British people are decent, honest, hard-working people who like their neighbours. It doesn't matter where they come from. And I think that was the thing that what religion they preach. And I think that was happening during the pandemic. You saw neighbourhoods happening, coming together again. Is it when you write a book like this and you talk about you're positive, your overall view, having researched all the evidence for and against, is that Britain is a place that is not looking back at yesterday and afraid of the future, but can embrace the future with the lessons it's learned from yesterday.
So your question is what exactly?
It's basically, are you positive about the future?
Yes, I'm very optimistic about the future, and I think a lot of the things that look as though they're going wrong aren't going wrong. If you take the example of extremism on right and left, the best way of dealing with them is to absorb them towards the centre, and the two-party system does that very capably. So don't worry about it. These extremists will go away. When the next election comes up, you'll find the two parties building up again, and you've got two, in my view, good leaders for them. I think the Conservative leader is very rational, articulate, clever and sensible. And I'm much less hostile to the present Prime Minister than a lot of people are. I think he's a decent, sensible person who is trying his best in an extremely difficult situation.
The book is called Yesterday, The United Kingdom from Thatcher to COVID. It is by Brian Harrison, who we're speaking to today. Listeners, if you want to order it, go click on the front cover in the virtual bookstore and it will be making its way to you. Brian, do you have an online presence? Do you have a website or anything like that? Or do you leave that all up to your publisher?
I leave that all to people who are better at these devices than I am. So I leave it to other people, but I'd welcome any sort of communication if people want to get in touch with me by more traditional methods, by writing to me, by using the internet, which is a major asset in enabling people to communicate with each other. It's a complete revolution, completely peaceful, and the British have been in the forefront of introducing it. And
I think we should have a special mention for your lovely wife, who managed to set up this whole thing, talk through the process. So, Victoria, Vicky, thank you so much, Vicky, for setting this up, because as you can hear, it's loud and clear and not a problem at all. The book is called Yesterday. It is by Brian Harrison. Brian, it's been a pleasure, a privilege, and absolutely brilliant to speak to you this morning. Thank you very much for your time today.
Well, thank you very much.